All right, and so today we're going to talk about user permissions on this webinar about SAM. And should you not know who I am, my name is Stefanie, and I'm the founder and CEO of InReach Solutions. So welcome to the call. The video is a little weird for me, but hi, I'm here. So today what we're going to cover is why you would set up user permissions and how to do that. We're going to get pretty specific about user permissions because there's a lot of detail to setting up the permissions and also ways that you can really create a subset of records for the different client users that you'll have of your system. And then we'll also talk about some special considerations that you'll want to know when you're making changes to other parts of the site and how that affects permissions. Also, kind of fun ways to figure out testing for permissions and things like that. So you all received this lovely image. And so the three of us aren't going to be on the, well, two of us are on the call today, but I am the only one going to present. Steve over here, this gentleman here, has gotten out of having to actually talk to you guys about permissions. But the last webinar that we had, Steve kind of called me out on this goblet here. Let's see. This goblet here that, you know, it's a goblet. It is a wine glass. However, my family just uses it for water. The reason why I'm telling you any and all of this is because this gentleman here in the center, Don, used to live across the street from me, and he presented me with these goblets. So the date of this picture that he's got here, I was probably working on a project with Steve, and kind of out of the corner of my eye saw Don walking up to my house. And so Don decided to come over and take a picture of himself in front of my house on the swing of my cherry tree. And the reason, again, that I'm sharing this story with you is because Don is totally welcome at any time to come and take this picture of himself on my swing. But I'm not going to necessarily give him the keys to my house. So here we start talking about user permissions. So it's funny for me. You guys can let me know on chat if you think it is such. So before we set up a new permission, we're going to review the base permissions that are in the system. So by default, before you've made any changes to your site, SAM comes with a view and edit, and full admin permissions. And they kind of are, or rather allow exactly what they say that they allow. So view is like you can view everything in the database, but you cannot make edits, you cannot delete, and you are not a full admin to make administrative changes. View and edit can view everything in the system, and it can edit everything in the system. View and edit by default does not have any deletion responsibilities. So if you made an error and actually needed to delete something out, you would have to ask someone with full admin permissions. There is also the potential that the view and edit permission is modifiable in your site to allow deletion of some sorts. And then full admin is just that. These are folks that we kind of go back and forth with calling them SAM admins because these are the people who administer your database. They can make all the process changes and they can definitely see every single record. They set up new passwords, they allow accesses, and they deal with user permissions, which we'll really be talking about today. The second thing that you need to think about is what do these users actually need to access in the database? So kind of a little dive into what is their role with your organization, and are there specific pieces of a record that you want to collect that maybe this person doesn't need to have access to? So just kind of shaping up on paper what it is that this person does and what they need to have access to. Knowing, of course, that the permission can actually change, okay? So do teams or users with similar roles need the same access? So the third point here is a permission type can actually be applied to multiple users. So all the social workers that are contracted to do home studies might have a specific set of permissions. You might also have folks that are just accounting or just fundraising, and they only have access to those specific pieces. So you will determine that certainly on part 2 of all the different users that you've got in your system, what are the kind of accesses that they need. And so let's jump right into actually setting up permissions. I'm going to log in and talk about where you can find these details. All right, so from the home page, there's 2 ways to access the settings screen. You can access it here from the navigation bar. You can also access it from the sidebar. Either place is going to take you to the settings screen. So this settings screen looks a little different for me as a full admin than it does for someone with a view and edit permission. But we're talking to SAM admins today, so these folks typically have the same kind of settings look that I have here. On the right is a link called permissions. It also has the key image so that you can get right there. And I'm thinking there is actually one additional spot. Just because I thought about it, I'll go take you back from the home page. You can also click on Security Center, which we've talked a lot about in the last month or so, and then you can access permissions as well. And we'll jump back a little bit to Security Center a little bit later. Once you're in the permissions screen, this will give you all the permission types that you have, just a list of all these permission types that are available. So you'd never see the full admin here because you cannot modify it, but you can modify the view and edit and the view only that are available. The other variations are variations of permissions that I've made into this demo site. And we'll talk about how we can make modifications to them, because you might make a modification to a view and edit to enable or to allow rather deleting. Maybe that's something that you want to add, or you want to add an action to that item or to that permission type, you could do so. I'm actually going to focus on this one, Families in Oregon, because it's got a pretty granular level of access that we'll speak to. So when you first open up a permission type, you're taken to all the different entity types. They're color-coded just like the tabs at the top. And it shows underneath kind of a high-level overview of what this permission can view and edit if it has edit potential. So this is pretty fine-grained as far as what this person can do, or this permission level can do. So I'm going to go in here and click Edit to make some changes to it and to just look at what it looks like behind this screen. Once you click Edit, you are taken to the option to see exactly what this user can view, edit, and delete at really high level. So for instance, I'm going to remove this and remove this for a second. And you can see that as I limit what they can view, they certainly can't edit or delete, and so those options come away. As I open up their view, I can determine whether they can see the tables that come underneath the case, or if they can view all of them, or just a select. If I collect a selected view of those, I get all of the subtables that come underneath the case that I can give permission to view, edit, and delete for. So the first, I will admit, this is not something that you want to do every day. It is an administrative feature, but once they're built, you're really not changing this at all after that, with a caveat that we'll talk about a little bit down the road. So view and edit, what I can view and edit, and then if there are any subtables, I can certainly allow them to view all or view a subset, and then I get those. So this person, and I am actually going to incorporate a little bit more and allow them to view and edit post-adoption reports as well. let them go into the birth mother, or let them go into the child, because they've got access to the family record. So I'm letting them view, but I'm not letting them edit the child or the birth parent, because maybe I've got those roles really segregated in my organization. Let them view here the post-adoption reports as well, the current version of those. So as I allow viewing, I'm always given these three options to view all subtables, a select of those subtables, or they cannot view any subtables. When I click the selected subtables, I then have the ability to select which very specific subtables do I want. And so it kind of is deep of a layer cake as you've got your database set up. That's how far down you'll need to go, depending, again, on how specific or limiting, rather, that you want to make this permission type. Because certainly I can allow them to view and edit everything, and could click view and edit all subtables, or view all subtables, rather, and whether or not I'm going to allow them to edit these, right? So I can make this really simple, or I can make it more complex. It's really going to depend on what your team is needing. Okay. I'm going to go back to viewing selected, view and edit, and view selected. I want them to be able to view and edit permission, adoption and post-adoption reports, the child, the birth mother, and we'll go ahead and give these current reports as well. Gotcha. I want them to be able to view and edit home study. I also want them to be able to view and edit background checks. So it's a pretty lengthy list of tables, because adoption and foster care are pretty heavy lifting programs. There's a lot of processes and a lot of tracking that's involved. So there are a lot of tables. If you have questions with these, you go ahead, and that's a support request, or we'll come together and kind of solution what the right permission level is. I am going to let this person view child records. Actually, I'm going to leave it as not for a little bit so that you can see that. But I am going to let them view and edit the the organization and the person records. A lot of times in your permission levels, it's important to allow organizations and persons, because these have roles on your client records. So they might be set as the social worker, they might be set as a placing agency or a home study provider. There's some kind of role that typically links to a person or organization record that's also in your site. Because again, organizations and persons are kind of like your Rolodex for your organization. It's any constituents and peers that you're working with that have a role within your organization or within working with your clients. Other things that you can manage with a permission in granting access to certain things are a few features, being the events. They could view and edit, they could send bulk emails, or they might be able to view and edit templates. Some of the things that they cannot do is modify reports, which is a big one that we're going to work on changing. They cannot configure checklists. They cannot modify form customizers. So those are going to be changes that are done at the full admin access. And for me, I kind of see pros and cons, because in my world, I kind of believe that less is more. So having too many cooks in the kitchen is a real thing and is a real concern for your database. We've often seen when there's too many admins, there's overlapping configuration changes, which then, people are looking at things that they did and someone else has overwritten it or removed it or things like that. Let me see. Okay, so the two things that they cannot do, again, are reports. They can't build reports. So they can use a report. They can add filters to a report. However, that report is not static. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but they can't build a brand new report or edit the default configurations of that. They cannot configure checklists. They cannot create auto actions. They cannot build forms. So all of those actions and responsibilities really fall to the SAM admin, who is set as a full admin in your system. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So once you've selected what tables that and whether this permission type can view and edit and or delete each of those different tables, you can further define what they can see by adding filters. So there's a small link right here, and I'll actually scroll in just to make sure you can see it. A small link right here that you can apply filters to. So we can say that this permission type can only see families that are in a specific state, or families or children that are in a specific program. You might have permission types that are set up very specifically to each user. Things that I'm thinking about like that would be social workers that are doing the home study, the people who are actually writing the home study, that only need access to really those family records for that bit of work that they're doing. You would have a permissions type set up where they can see all the families, but the filter is that the home study provider or the home study worker, home study writer, however you've got that role labeled on the home study record, must be that specific person. Okay, and I will talk about some other ways when you're creating kind of variations to a permission, just like that. So this is a modification of a permission type. What I want to see, to show you now, before I go into all the different ways that you can build or create new permission types, is to actually talk to you about what does it, testing this permission type, and what does it look like for the user? Because that, as a full admin, you don't actually gain that access unless you log in as them. So I've created a person record in my site. Just find this guy. This is, let me go to his first name because I named it after my kid, but I'm not sure if it is. All right, so it is Ethan Zosiakin here, and I've granted him the permissions under Edit, Login, and Permissions of families in Oregon. So I've got to have him a login enabled, and I've given him this specific permission type, which is just from the drop-down list, those lists that the options that we saw for different permissions. And so I've given him this list. I've given him a username and set his password, and so now I'm ready to go and log in as this individual. So my recommendation, so that you can keep your full admin access up and open so you can make modifications to the permission if you need to, is to actually open SAM in a new web browser. So I typically use Google Chrome, and you could open it up in Firefox or in Safari or Internet Explorer and log in as that user to get a glimpse of what they see. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as Ethan. And right off the bat, what I notice about my system is the entity tabs at the top are different. He has a limited view, and so he can only see families, organizations, and persons, which is all I allowed him access to see. So I do not see youth records. I do not see birth parent records or donors and volunteers or any of the other potential tabs that you have in the system. If I click on View All Family Reports to get a list, my list in the system is actually way more extensive than this, but this allows just the reports that have the tables on it that he can access. So thought I had, let me look here, family background checks. There is actually a report that's family all, and I can't see that report on here because there's something, oh, I remember what it is. Let me go back. So I need to make an adjustment. on that report that I want to pull up for you guys, let's see. So I want to pull up the family all report. And it's not available to Ethan because when I look at the report configuration, there's a table on this report that he can't see. He doesn't have access to right now. So again, the purpose of having dual logins open at the same time is to help you go and make modifications. So I'm going to go in here, change this, and find the adoptive child preferences. And now I'm allowing him to edit or view and edit. That'll be fine. Go down to the bottom and save. And now I'm back in Ethan's view of Sam. I'm going to refresh the screen, click all family reports. And now I have a few more reports accessible to me, and including the one that I want. Okay. I don't know how many families that I've got in the system, but it's definitely more than 11. However, these are all the families that Ethan can see because the state of these families is how we filtered this, his permission by, and all of these families live in Oregon. So he can go in, click any of these families, and kind of, he gets access to that family record, and he can see different things. So I had not set that he could see communications. And when I go in here, he actually doesn't have access to any visibility to any communications that have taken place so far for this family, if there are any at all. And if I go to click add, my access is denied. Okay, so you can kind of poke around and see what can this user do and what can't they do. So I've got access to the checklist. I don't think I gave him access to documents. Something that I talked about earlier was their settings screen, and this person is not a full admin, and their settings screen is much trimmer than mine is. So just all those options of things that full admins can do is taken away. Then jump back to this family record. I did give him access to home studies, so I can go in and add and edit things on the home study. All of that can be done. What I cannot do is obviously the things that I've prevented, or not allowed. So when I go into counseling, there's nothing shown because I can't access that. I'm just going to check in real quick and see if anybody has questions with that piece. Okay. Let's jump back to the permission screen because we have a few more minutes left. When you've got users that you really want to make it so that they can only see families or children where they are listed as the provider on that, like some kind of a role, right, on that client's record, I would recommend you setting up what you want them generally to be, and then you can create a new permission type from this one. You also have this option. Actually, it looks like it's only available once you choose it. So if you had like a social worker permission type, just kind of in general, that gives them all the view and edits that you want this person to see, once you know you have that, then you can create a new one from this one, which will allow a complete duplicate with a different name so you can make it specific to that user's name. So it shouldn't take a lot of setup. All you would do is recreate it. Let's say this would be like families in Washington, or yeah, Minnesota, Steve over there. And now I've got a brand new permission, and then I will need to go and edit my filter here and change it into Minnesota. Now this user would have something different. Let me see if I go back to Ethan, edit his login and give him families in Minnesota. And now I'm going to jump back into Ethan's visibility. I was on a family record from a family in Oregon, but now my access is denied to that family record because I don't have access to that anymore. So it is really dynamic. It changes on the spot. So know that. One of the things that people have mentioned to me is, you know, this user can't see this new item that we've added, that item being a table, right? So maybe we build a new table for some kind of program that you have. SAM is not automatically updating your permissions to allow that table access or access to that table, any of the permissions, right? Because you might have lots of different permission types. Only full admins will see that brand new table. So if there is a permission type set up that you need to, that you need to allow them access to. So something we recently set up are kind of like documents underneath the adoption or underneath the placement. And that allows those documents to be shown on the triad or all parties to that placement. And that table was something brand new that we've set up that allows them, so if a user cannot see something, you will want to go into whatever the permission type is to kind of diagnose what's going on. Go in, click and open, look at the filters, that might be telling, or it'll be in here and going and looking and saying, okay, actually we are going to allow them to see this. If you choose all family tables, I'm not sure actually. So Lisa's brought up a question of if they can view all the family tables and we add a brand new table to the site. I believe that I'm going to say yes, that new table would be included because they can see it all. A lot of times there's a selection of selected subtables, and that's what throws people off. And one of the things that I guess I want to make mention here again is you only want to select view selected subtables if there are certain pieces that you do not want them to have access to. It's not necessary to go into this level of detail if really they can see everything. It really simplifies greatly what options you have to have or you have to make, right? So it's only when you click the selected subtables that you need to go in, okay? And you go in and choose what they can. So we talked about testing, we've talked about create new from existing, we've talked about just this editing and the filters. That's kind of what I've got for you today. Let me go back here to my webinar. And so we talked about permissions, testing them. So again, use 2 different browsers. Review the records that they have accessible. So like go to the reports, kind of check in on the sidebar links and make sure it's really looking for that which you've limited their access to. That's probably going to be the most important thing, to go in and double check that they have access. They will certainly let you know if they're trying to get into something and they can't, and you can revise the permission type. Also, once you're done with that permission, because we're now on a user-driven pricing scale or pricing model, you want to go in and disable that test user. So because SAM admins are on the call, the last day of the month, check in. It can be one of those roles of like checking in to see, is everybody still in that needs access to the system? Do I have these test records that I just got too busy and forgot to disable? Go ahead and disable those users at the end of the month, or certainly by the end of the month or when you're done. Couple points to remember is your full team should not be full admins. Again, because there's overlap in the roles, so you want to be mindful of that. Any tables that you create after, if you've got that selected subtables, because you're really trimming down on what users can see, you'll have to go and add that to the permission, so remembering that. And then thinking about the tools that are available to only users with full admin. One of the big ones that I see people really giving access, or full admin access for, again, is report building. And again, reports don't take that long. Once a user has a report set up and filtered the way they like, they could offer that URL to the full admin and say, can you make me a report that looks like this? Which then it's pretty simple to go and do that. So those are all options for you. And I'm going to thank you. Cheers. And let's see. Oh, David is asking, let's see. So there are a couple questions before I get off. Let's give you a little bit of opportunity to get those. Let me pull up my chat here. Merge. I need to check on merge. Let me do a check and I will do a follow-up on that question, because merging is a deletion activity, right? So you're taking two records and one is being deleted and merged into the other. So the first record, I will check on whether delete is possible or if that is just the full admin access. So I will let you know after I finish the call. I'll kind of go and do a test on that. And conversions. So entity conversion, when a record is a family and they're also a donor, or they're a family and any other type of record in your site, that is a full admin access. So yeah, it is at this point is something that's only available to full admin. So you will want to make sure that, it's just a role that a full admin needs to take. They're a database administrator for your organization, although like Steve, it was not something that was his role in entirety for a lot of you guys. So entity conversions, merging, they're kind of one-off situations. They're not something that I don't think if you are doing it really regularly, we probably should have a conversation about that. Entity conversions, though, is something that, it's this one-time thing on a record, maybe 2 times. They're not typically going to be, it's not something that people are doing every day. So right now at this point, it is something that is a full admin access. Do you guys have any other questions before I log off? I will share with you this webinar if you really feel like hearing my story again or want to just refresh yourself on this again. The email will contain a lot of links to guide you through building permissions, and certainly if you have any need any direct support on building one, send us a support request and we will get back with you. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off for now. Have a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, and we'll talk to you next time. Awesome. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Plug it.